Hello, friends. I am Vitaly Portnikov. The Wall Street Journal claims that the Trump administration, during negotiations in Paris, handed over proposals to the Ukrainian delegation and representatives of European countries regarding the end of the Russian-Ukrainian war and is awaiting a response to these proposals at the next meeting between American, Ukrainian, and European representatives, which will take place this week in London. And after this meeting, Donald Trump's special representative, Steve Withup, is reportedly supposed to visit the Russian capital again for negotiations with Putin. The proposals themselves seem to be such that neither the Ukrainian nor the Russian sides would agree to them, and Donald Trump had the opportunity to exit the negotiation process, blaming both Kyiv and Moscow for being unconstructive. Thus, Ukraine is being offered to agree that the United States could potentially recognize Crimea as Russian territory. In fact, it is also proposed to agree with Russian control over the occupied Ukrainian territories, but not to recognize their status. However, at the same time, the United States does not object to further arming Ukraine and providing military assistance to our country. It is also proposed that the territory of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant be declared neutral with control over this territory by the United States. We understand perfectly well that proposals to recognize the Russian status of Crimea will not be approved by any Ukrainian leadership, and in general, they violate the very essence of international law because they open a real Pandora's box. When any country in Europe or on any other continent can seize part of a neighboring state, declare this part its own territory, and then expect recognition of this step from other countries. I am not even mentioning that after the recognition of Crimea as Russian by the United States, what would prevent Washington from also recognizing the Russian status of other occupied Ukrainian territories? Moreover, I'm not sure that such an option is important for the Russian Federation. It is worth reminding that just because the United States recognizes a territory as Russian, it does not mean there will be general approval of its status. The United States did approximately the same thing with Western Sahara, which Morocco claims and effectively controls. As part of the Abraham Accords, the United States recognized Western Sahara as Moroccan territory in exchange for the restoration of diplomatic relations between Morocco and Israel. However, no other country that considered Sahara an independent state followed this path and continues to insist that the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic should exist on the territory controlled by Morocco. So, Washington's decision is not yet a fundamental change in international law for everyone. Well, on the other hand, the idea of a neutral status for the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is obviously unacceptable to the Russians, because from Putin's perspective, the territory of the Zaporizhzhia region is now a subject of Russia, and it would be astonishing to transfer control over a nuclear power plant on the territory of this subject to the United States of America. Also, of course, it is unlikely that Putin's plans include continuing to arm the Ukrainian army. After all, the Russian president continues to insist on stopping aid to Ukraine and halting mobilization into the ranks of the armed forces of Ukraine, even as a condition for a temporary ceasefire. It should not be assumed that Putin will agree to the idea of further military assistance for Ukraine in exchange for lasting peace, because for him, lasting peace means a helpless Ukraine that cannot resist the Russian Federation and will become easy prey for Moscow in future wars and conflicts. Thus, All these proposals by Donald Trump can be characterized either as yet another illusion offered by people who do not fully understand the political reality they are in. And the current American administration has repeatedly demonstrated a complete disconnect from reality and a desire to see the world not as it truly is, but as it exists in the mind of Donald Trump and his associates. Or it is about a much more realistic and cold-blooded calculation, a calculation related to the fact that Donald Trump realized what he should have understood even before being elected President of the United States, that there are no simple solutions to the Russian-Ukrainian war. That, in order to resolve the conflict, a lot of serious long-term efforts are needed, which may span the entire duration of his term as President of the United States. That long-term and serious assistance to Ukraine is necessary for this. If Donald Trump himself does not wish to agree with this course of events, he must offer both Moscow and Kyiv proposals that will be unacceptable to them, and then rid himself of this burden, exit the negotiation process, and shift the responsibility for further negotiations to end the war onto the European countries. Well, so if Moscow and Kyiv cannot come to an agreement among themselves, let the Europeans persuade them. This is not an American conflict. It is taking place on the European continent. We are well aware of all these statements by Trump, and we don't even need to repeat them now. So, outwardly, Trump is showing optimism. We know that he wrote on social media that this week Moscow and Kyiv might come to an agreement and cooperate fruitfully with the United States. So it turns out that the main thing for both the Russian Federation and Ukraine is economic cooperation with America. And for this reason, they are ready to agree to any American conditions. And then maybe after such optimistic expectations of a positively inclined American president, disappointment may follow, but not due to his fault, rather due to those who do not understand the full value of this important economic cooperation between the United States and the countries involved in the Russian-Ukrainian war. And then Donald Trump, as early as next week, might be able to say, with a light heart, as he believes, that he will no longer participate in the settlement of the Russian-Ukrainian war, and that he has done everything in his power to help the parties exit the conflict. And this, by the way, could be the essence of all those proposals that are currently being published through American media. Thank you, friends. Stay on this channel, subscribe to it, follow my social media, the Patreon channel, Buy Me a Coffee, Donatella, which help develop these resources. Use the sponsorship feature. On YouTube itself, Victory to Peace.